Hello and welcome to the Sociology Show podcast. Do you want to start by telling us who you are and what you do, please?
Yes, my name is Sidsel Harder. It rhymes with whistle, Sidsel. And I'm basically sex, drugs, and rock and roll, or maybe sex, drugs, and digital media sociologist. So I've been working with intoxication and nightlife and sexuality and what people do, what kind of sex people have, what kind of gender relation people have in nightclubs, and which was what I did and sometimes do before. And then when the whole sort of sexting, revenge porn in quotation marks cases started to pop up, I started working on that, and I did my PhD on that, and I'm now doing a postdoctoral international research project on what kind of porn people report to hotlines for child sexual abuse material.
Thank you. Thank you. Very interesting area of sociology. Some say some areas of sociology are quite dull and mundane, but what you're studying certainly isn't.
And then again, like pornography is a part of 80% of Danish people's everyday life, in a sense. So in a way, pornography is sort of the perfect fit for where sociology of everyday life means sociology of transgression or deviance, if you want.
Yeah, and it's that actually that I was interested in, and that's why we got in touch on Twitter. The discussion on pornography is very divisive amongst people on Twitter and in the sociological world. And I can see anything from porn in any form should be banned, should be completely outlawed, to people at the other end of the scale saying, you know, it's a natural interest, it's a curiosity, and porn has existed as long as back to sort of caveman time, you know, caveman paintings. I wanted to get your view on it, and we'll try and work out where perhaps you stand on that argument as well. So what's your initial view on pornography? I know that's such a big question, but what is your view on whether it should exist, be banned, and so on as well?
If I could start another place, I would start by saying that you're completely right, that unfortunately, the porn debate, going back to what we call the sex wars in the 80s, isn't actually a debate so much as a war. It is a place, I think, like no other field I know of, where people are completely divided. It's almost like, and it has been compared to the climate debate, where you have, except it's not just that you have some people who are unscientific who denies climate change. It's actually two completely valid academic fields that are completely divided on a topic. It's divided what we should do about porn. It's divided what porn is. It's divided whether it's good or bad. What it actually does. There unfortunately very, very few standpoints that academics are actually able to agree on if they're either pro or con. And that is, I mean, I'm trying to find a nice thing to say about that. Maybe that people are it's very deep within people, that it's something that's a part of the sociology that's very close to people's heart. But actually it's not. Like, I think for a lot of reasons, it means that the porn debate just does not happen in sociology, because we don't want, it's very hard to have that debate within sociology, where we're used to having some kind of middle ground to stand on. So a lot of the pornography debate does happen in media studies, or in more sort of almost medical public health, maybe not so much public health, but sort of like sort of addiction studies and whatever. That being said, is the long and winding road where I'm not going to tell you that I'm either pro or against. I think that's just a main flaw in pornography. You're not asking a food sociologist if they're for or against food. You might ask them if they're for or against meat. Yeah. And without making too many puns on that, I would say that I am definitely in the camp that would say that we're not going to be able to progress with pornography by being against it. So I was trained within the pro-pornography field, in the sense that I attended a class at University of California, Berkeley, with one of the first professors that in media study who invented porn studies, out of the idea that you can't, like some scholars have argued, Catherine McKinnon, for example, and Drew Dworkin, that pornography is wrong in itself. Linda Williams was saying that you have to watch pornography to know what it's about, and you have to talk specifically about what kind of images in porn are bad and why are they bad. So it's much more of an empirical discipline. But I will also say that I think there, and Williams has come back to this too, that there are definite problems in the pro-porn camp, if you will, in the sense that we tend to, that kind of scholarship doesn't always engage with the problematic sides of pornography or even the mainstream sides of pornography. It does to some extent. It does to some extent say that the reason why we should be interested in porn is that it has good and bad sides and we want to work on the bad ones. But it does tend to steer towards some of the niches in porn, which is not where the real problems is always. And it's not what I find most interesting. That was a very long answer.
No, I think that's really important to establish, because, you know, just to say pornography in general, well, that's huge, isn't it? We're talking anything from what would be regarded as soft porn right up to the most extreme. You mentioned Catherine McKinnon there, Andrea Dworkin. Is that true that the majority of those that want it to be banned is coming from sort of the radical feminist element?
I think that's a good question. Today, I do think that most people that I know that are critical of porn are building on McKinnon's work, which is important, and which has like pointed to important elements. I'm wondering if there would also be, I'm wondering if I can think of anyone who's against pornography who hasn't read McKinnon. I don't think I can.
Yeah. Because one of the arguments that I've seen,
especially in the UK, right?
Yeah, true, yeah. One of the arguments that I've seen come up, which I'm really interested in, and it does go into media studies as well, is this idea that if people watch porn, then it will influence their behaviors, almost like the hypodermic needle, hypodermic syringe theory, which in other areas of media studies has kind of been disproven, hasn't it? If you watch violent films, you will become violent, etc. So I'm not sure where that argument stands up.
I think if you're pro-porn, you're definitely going to say that it doesn't, and that it's. But then if you're going to build on that whole media scholarship. But then if you're against pornography, you're going to say that pornography is not like any other kind of media. You're going to say that pornography is not a form of art or pop culture. It's a form of degradation of women. And that is going to influence you in a way directly, or it is going to influence you the way, as one of the ways in which hegemonic masculinity is being is part of your upbringing and your sexual script in a way. It's just that even sexual scripts theory would say that there are loads of different ways that you are being developed as a sexual being. So porn wouldn't be the only one, and it wouldn't make you do anything per se. But I mean, if you are against pornography, you would say that, yes, at the furthest end, or like you could say that the people in pornography are being harmed by pornography. The people watching pornography are being harmed, but the people that are around people that are watching pornography are also being harmed. So pornography is bad to everybody, everywhere. And I mean, before we go into saying that's just not a valid argument, I think it's important that we do, for some kind of sexual images, hold to that still. So we do no longer talk about child pornography. It's being changed legally in a lot of countries, but there is that idea in the study of child sexual abuse material that is an image that's bad for you, not only if you're in the image, if you're seeing the image, but also if you're in a society that's seeing the image. So I think that just depends on, are you going to go at this from a media studies perspective where a visual is a visual, or are you going to go at it from a feminist perspective where you're going to say this is not just an image, this is a direct representation of women's subordination?
Because this is probably almost impossible to measure, is there any evidence that since the ubiquity of pornography and easy access to it, there has been an increase in violence towards women, paedophilia and so on? Because many would say that that's always been around, it pre-existed pornography in the form that we view it now anyway.
I mean, Denmark was the first country to legalize pornography, right? And that happened when, like, at that point, one of the Danish sociologists, criminologists, did make that study to see if the legalization meant that there were fewer rapes, which he thought it did. But I think at this point, I think the best study on that issue is the study that tried to do a control experiment with a control group of men that hadn't seen pornography and weren't able to find any. And that became the study. So at this point, like, how are you going to measure that? I don't think you can. And I don't think it makes that much sense either, because not unless you have, what do you call it, like licensed pornography that's sort of out there in the same way for every kind of person. Like, it's obvious that different people are watching different kind of pornography. And like you said, like, pornography is a lot of different things. It's likely that it's going to affect you in different ways.
Yeah. Because one of the things that the porn companies can do, I think Pornhub did a piece of research on this. They can look at the genres that are being tapped into, that are most looked at. Does that give us any indication as to what's going on?
I mean, I always get a journalist at that time of year when they release it. It's going to say, "Are you going to say anything interesting about this?" I think that's hard, both because of how it's done and how the research is done, and also because of what does that even tell us? I think the most interesting things about Pornhub genres is that pornography is, you can say that it's been around, it's been found at the walls of Pompeii, it's always been there, but it's also fluctuates like fashion does in a way. So the porn genres and what's interesting for people is gonna shift. I think actually just the idea that you make those kind of statistics is interesting. And I mean, apart from that, I sometimes try to make like ideas that now people are watching more like in like porn that between a stepmom and a stepson and whatever now, because there's new family patterns. But then I talk to people that are watching those genres and they're like, nah. So I mean, I think it's really hard to, mostly those statistics are being used by people that would say, is it becoming more, are more people watching more violent porn, for example, right? So that's going to tap into that argument. Or is it true that women are only watching women's movies, and so on? So I don't know. I think the most interesting stuff about Pornhub statistics is the traffic. So like you could, for example, I used to always show this, like you can see that in situations where something happens, that's going to influence people's pattern, whether it's that people think they're going to be nuked and then don't watch porn until they know they aren't, and then they watch a lot, or whether it's right after Game of Thrones is airing, I'm going to be searching for that kind of porn. Like those things are fun, I think, and they're an argument to people, none of whom is here, who think that porn is not really a sociological subject, that porn should stay within media studies. I mean, to me, even though I don't buy into the idea that behavior is going to be directly influenced by the meaning of porn, I do think that it's important to study it sociologically, and it's just not happening a lot.
I mean, one of the sociological issues you just touched upon is what women watch, and something that interests me is a lot of the research you talked about, the control group, seems to be the effect pornography has on men. Does pornography make men more violent and so on? It seems to ignore the fact that women obviously watch porn too. I don't know if that's in line with your research as well.
Yes, sure. I mean, women, I came at this from substance use and misuse, and it's the same argument there. Like, because it's mostly men, are we going to research men more? I think in some ways that's actually not happening in pornography studies, because a lot of pornography studies is interested in women, either on both sides, actually, either saying that pornography can liberate sexuality, it can be a way that women get inspired to have more interesting sex, but it's also, on the other side, we have studies that show that more people read 50 Shades of Grey if they were in an abusive relationship. So I mean, you can argue about that, and if it's even porn, but I think what we do know is women watch less porn. They watch it less frequently. It is a part of their lives, even if they don't watch it. Women are not just watching women's genres. A lot of women did read 50 Shades of Grey. A lot of them liked it. Some of them didn't. Some because they had too much sex. Some because it had too little. So, I mean, just the idea that do women watch porn is a little flawed, because a lot of different women are going to watch a lot of different porn in a lot of different ways. It's just that it's more tabooed, and that maybe was something that 50 Shades tapped into because it was coming out at the same time as the Kindle.
Yeah, I was just wondering if it is just consumed in a different way, that this might be very stereotypical. Men are more likely to watch porn, women are more likely to read erotic literature. Is that true?
That is still true. It's also still true that men are more likely to use pornography for masturbation, and women are more likely to use it for inspiration, not inspiration as I'm going to go do that, but more just not directly connected, and more like techniques and stuff. It's also true that women are often or sometimes interested in something that has more of a narrative, that leaves more up to imagination. But then you have someone like Susanna Posenin in Finland, who has also argued that if women want something that's just stimulating for fantasy, there's a lot better literature to go look at. And for porn, women are going to want the real thing, and women are going to be as likely to look at anal sex or gangbang. But I do think what is important to remember is that men are less influenced by the critique of porn than women are. So in a way, porn, I think a lot of women will tell me like, but I don't watch it. And I mean, a lot of that is also because you're going to have the whole feminist argument going in your brain. You're going to be, and some men are going to have that now, some men are going to have that more. But I think for women, it's often really, really hard to not be judging all the time, feeling that they have to navigate, evaluate what's happening. Why is she saying that? Is she actually enjoying it? Was she first like, and that can be exhausting. To all the time question whether what you're doing is okay because it was something that you were brought up not to do.
Yeah. I saw a feminist argument that a lot of females watch female on female porn, actually, even if they didn't consider themselves a lesbian anyway.
Or male on male.
Yeah.
And I had this discussion with a journalist. He was like, no. And which is so funny though, because female on female is something that so many men see. So why wouldn't women watch male on male? That's because we have a different idea of what the male body looked like. And it's because we have this sort of this idea that there has to be some kind of identification. Why should there?
I did interview someone, sorry, their name escapes me, who wrote a book called Girls Who Like Boys Who Like Boys. I'll have to try and find out. Yeah. I did want to touch on what the legality is, what the legal restrictions are. Obviously, it differs from country to country, place to place. What are the main rules in terms of what is allowed and what isn't allowed?
That is very different, and especially in the UK, you have a very discussed law on extreme pornography. In a country like Denmark, the limit is 18. So you can't watch someone have sex even though they're above the age of consent. You can consent to having sex, but you can't consent to filming it. And if people are under 18, it's not only illegal to distribute or to produce, but it's also illegal to possess. But Denmark is the first country, it's one of the most liberal countries. So a lot of countries, and that's what you see statistically, at least up to 210, and I think that goes on today, that you are seeing generally a liberalization worldwide, but you're also seeing more and more sort of, it's also sort of, there are little sort of corners that keeps getting covered up. So whether it's violent pornography, whether it's animals, whether it's and so the specialization of legislation keeps going on, even though we are becoming more liberal.
And who makes that decision as to what is too graphic or not? Which genres are in and which are out?
I think the depressing answer today is that that's the money min. If you listen to a podcast like the Financial Times Hot Money, I think that's the best illustration of what happens when pornography is online. It's free, and the only way that you're actually, the only people that's really gonna like monitor it is the people who are monetizing on it. So that means if you want to have Visa and MasterCard supporting your transactions for advertisements and subscriptions, you want to stay within some of their ideas, and those are to large extent very arbitrary and very influenced by media stories and people. So Financial Times covered how there's a Pulitzer Prize journalist in the New York Times who wrote critically about Pornhub, and that meant that a financial an activist working within the financial sector read that. Bill Ackman, he called his friend from the tennis club, who was the CEO of MasterCard, and MasterCard shuts down Visa too, even though Pornhub deletes 2/3 of their clips and you can no longer download. So that's how decisions get made in digital pornography, which, I mean, being very Danish about it, I think I don't want my money men to deciding what kind of porn I'm watching. I want my politicians to do that, and I want the industry to be in on it.
I should have guessed that, shouldn't I? I should have guessed that was the answer. So I'm just aware of time as well. I wondered who else, to get a balanced argument, if listeners, sociologists are interested in the debate and they want a balanced argument on both sides, alongside yourself, who else should listeners look out for? Who should they be reading?
I think Antoinette Huber, who's at Liverpool Hope in the UK, writes really good stuff about this. And she is, I hope she will agree, that she is a little bit more on the critical side than I am. I think it's important to go back and read the classics. I think still read Dworkin and McKinnon, but read them alongside people like Linda Williams, people like Ellen McKee, people like McNair, and Byron Albury, and of course, Atwood and Smith. So if you're a sociology student, you're interested in this, I think Porn Studies is your go-to, the journal. It's UK based and does a lot of interesting things.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. What else would you like to add? What else do you think is key to the debate? So we talked about the legality of it, what's being watched. What else do you think is a key argument within pornography?
I think when I started studying pornography, it was in a class where we had Monday lectures on the text, and they were heavy stuff. Like this was Lacan and who else? And then on the Thursday, we would have a screening on a little screen from the professor's collection taken from the Kinsey archive. We don't do that anymore in higher education. I think there are good reasons not to, but the best reason is that you can access all of that yourself. And I think if you're interested in pornography, especially as a student, you want to do a paper on it, you have to start by finding out sort of what's out there and how do you feel about it, because it's just too hard going into that field if you have a vague conception about pornography and how you're going to feel about it. So I think you have to start by dipping your toes, and if that's not for you, maybe I would look at other fields to dive into. It is a challenging field, but it's also a field that I think that there is so much more research that needs to be done on.
Thank you. Thank you. And if people want to find out more about your work, where can they find it? Can they add you on Twitter? Do you want to give out some details?
Sure. I'm really, really bad at social media, but I do think I have some kind of handle, right? So it's at Harder Sidsel, with a and it's spelled completely nuts.
I'll just go. So it's at HARDERSIDSEL.
Yes.
Great, excellent. And where else can they find out about your work?
I published an article in BJC recently. And if you read Danish, I'm coming out with a small sort of booklet in the series that called Reflection in English, but which is a sort of pocket introduction. So far only in Danish.
Thank you. Thank you. And just to finish off, I was actually surprised. I got quite a few people who said they'd want to come onto the show to talk about the topic. So I wondered if we could do a follow-up at some point and maybe do it in a bit more of a debate style. We'll get a few people on from different perspectives if you're up for it.
That would be awesome. That would be awesome, especially if you would try to get it in, if you would try to think about a format which would be less pro-con.
Yeah.
I think one of the things I've talked to Antoinette about is that I have this dream that we would watch something and talk about that. Like, I think it gets more interesting to talk about something that's very very tangible, and where you have to qualify your arguments with the same data, because a lot of times what happens is that the porn scholars are talking about girl on girl, butch feminist, ethical, sustainable pornography, and the anti-pornography movement is talking about sort of poor, forced, deep-throating, gangbang-ish, and that doesn't meet each other anywhere. So I think, like, do a book club and we can go back and read 50 Shades now that everybody's seen the movie, which is not porn.
Yeah,
I think go back and read the book, which kind of is still, but which is very, very funny to read now after the years that's passed. I think go back and watch Deep Throat. Go back, watch something on OnlyFans, as long as we're watching the same things and talking about.
Yeah, I think that's really important. That's really important. Great. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I feel like we've only just scratched the surface. So I think a follow-up to this with adding a few more people involved sounds like a fantastic idea. So thanks again. Thanks again for your time today. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye now.